Let's talk.
Giles Brown.
I have been looking forward to doing this interview all week. Backstage Chronicles by Carl Miller is the story of rock and roll, which cannot truly be told without the special Spinal Tap tales of the road crew, the unbelievable, the unmentionable, the unimaginable, and quite frankly, the unedible, probably all in this book. Delighted to say that the man who has worked with more artists than I can shake a very large stick at, but for example, Cat Stevens, I believe Iron Maiden in the mix, more. Anyway, cut to the quick. I'm delighted to say that probably the man who's eaten more bad catering than any of us have had to do. Carl Miller, author of Backstage. He's laughing now, but he joins me now. Carl, I am doffing my cap to you, sir. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Giles. Thanks for having me on, mate.
Pleasure. I'm just happy to see that you're not on, the back of some porter cabin with a bunch of leads sticking out of you, going, when did anybody see the drummer? And that is not sherbet.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, just give me a little bit about why you are the man to speak to about this particular dark art.
I don't really know that, John. I guess it's because I had the habit of, falling into farce and nonsense.
But where did it all begin? Because do people grow up and say, I want to be a roadie? It doesn't sort of happen that you just sort of fall into it, and if you can,
they don't advertise in the paper for them, do they? No, it started out. We go back to the '60s now, and basically I started hanging out with a band called the In-Betweens, and anyway. I've been around for them for a while. They eventually split up, and part of them went and formed a band called Slade, who a lot of people might have heard of. The other part got a gig as a backing group for American vocal groups like the Temptations and the Four Tops, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So anyway, when they got the job offer, they asked me if I'd go along with them, help them out. I said, sure, because I'd picked up a few tricks by then. And as a consequence to that, I bumped into a guy a couple of times who worked with a band called The Move.
Roy Wood and all that, yeah? Roy
Wood and Carl Wayne, etc., yeah. And he recommended me to a band called Foundations. So I went from the In-Betweens doing that job for £3 a week to moving to the Foundations for £20 a week. So there was, that was it really. And that's how it started from there.
So back in that, is this your basic driving the van, pointing them the right way up, making sure the stage is relatively well, what are you checking on? I mean, are you doing the rider? Are you getting there and setting up the lights? Because obviously these days it's an industry and everything is planned to the nth degree. Back in the 60s, it's psychedelia. It's that time of, you do it, but you're also doing a lot of shows. So what was the average sort of kind of gig like in the 60s to set up?
Well, for a start, touring wasn't really an operative word. We just kept gigging.
Yeah.
I mean, the Foundations didn't tour. They just kept gigging and gigging and gigging because you might know, Giles, that's how a band used to earn its money on the road those days. They didn't get money from records, or virtually nothing. Do you know what I mean? Mm. So anyway, that's really how it started. But, of course, the industry's evolved such a lot now. When I first started, you could go to some places in the early days and, there wasn't enough sockets to plug the equipment in. Little clubs like that, But, of course, now it's got more and equipment, technology, sound systems, lighting. In the old days, there was no such thing as a rider. Riders didn't really manifest themselves till the early 70s. But so in the old days, we used to have to sleep in the van or find a transport cafe somewhere, that kind of thing.
I mean, I'm just thinking of the physicalities of, you're in a van, everybody's in the back, as the book, was it Henry Rollins' book is called Get in the Back of the Van. You've got your kit with you. You're all sleeping there. It's basically you and 4 or 5 members, hopefully all blokes, because if there's a woman involved, Houston, we have a problem. Have you got your own sort of PA system then with that? Or are you using do you know what you're going to get when you turn up? Are you carrying any of the you presumably got the amps and the preamps and the pedals? What have you actually got?
The backline was taken with us. And in the early days, going back to the in-betweens again, that you turn up at a gig and, have to use whatever PA they got, and some were quite, just pre-war almost, But, and then when I joined the Foundations, Marshall, you might have heard the name Brandmain Marshall, they started with a couple of columns. And then there was a company called WEM, that started. And from, a little, PA system, it started to grow up to, 200 watts, 400 watts, 500 watts, plus, kept on going. And that's, I would say, about around 68, that's when sound systems started to really, develop as we see them now, with out-front mixers, etc., like that,
Yeah. The other thing that strikes me is we're heading into the murky, beautiful world, man, of psychedelia, and there are happenings, and people are dropping lava lamps, and, they're doing all sorts of interesting things with lights. With lights, is that a problem for you when you're trying to set up? I mean, are you now taking, bigger speakers? Have you got a tour bus, that sort of thing? I mean, when did you actually start to because the thing I love about this period is nobody's ever done this before, so you're kind of discovering it as you go along.
No, you're absolutely right there. Yeah, no, you're absolutely bang on. You were picking these tricks up as we went. It's very much learning on the job, if that makes sense. And what we used to do, lighting really was a thing. Pink Floyd really started the whole thing with lighting, as you probably know. Their light show. But then, when I started with Cat Stevens, we started to get into production as well, because his management company weren't a traditional music outfit. They were a theatrical company. And so his manager was very much into musicals and films and stuff like that, because a lot of his clients were like actors and film directors. And so we introduced, props, curtains, drawing backwards and forwards curtains, drapes, all that sort of element came into it. And I think Cat Stevens was probably the first to really, get theatrical with contemporary music.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because obviously if you've got Slade, then it's, turn everything up to 11 and go for it, and let's blow the kids off their platform boots at the back of the hall. But with somebody like Cat Stevens, who beautiful stuff, Catch Bill at 4, a Tears in the Fire Cat. You're not trying to do the Who at Wembley, are you? You want people to listen in a good way. So it's a different setup, and it's a different.
Yes.
If Cat Stevens had come on and gone, hello Miami, people have gone, that's not quite the Cat Stevens that we kind of know. So that's a different aspect, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, Cat Stevens is very, you might call it intimate, his shows, ideally, his shows would go better in a theatre rather than, shall we say, a town hall.
Sure.
Because, you've got the intimacy in a theatre, as you know, and, so it worked a lot better there, especially with the props and the scenery and all the changes and stuff like that,
One of the things that strikes me, and people don't think about this, is but when you are setting up a backline, i.e. all those bits and pieces that go to make up a gig, you can be doing this with very little sleep. You can be doing it having come off the back of, driving through the night, the whole bits and pieces. You haven't eaten very well. The band, the bass player's fallen out with drummer, and the singer's gone off with somebody's girlfriend, as they always do. It's raining. You're trying to set stuff up. And people don't think about this, but it's actually quite a dangerous environment to work on. People slip, they fall, they get electric shocks, lighting rigs fall. Just think about Curtis Mayfield. You've compiled these stories, but how close to the wire do we get sometimes in those early days?
Oh, yeah, that's a really interesting question. And funny enough, you're the first person to ever ask me that. But I can remember certainly one time in America, we had what they call a flying PA, which was columns on the stage plus going in the air, And during a sound check, the tackle, the rigging broke, and the whole one side of the PA that was flown in the air collapsed, and it smashed about the first 3 rows of seats.
Blimey.
In the audience, during the sound check. So good job it didn't happen during a show. But that's one occasion I remember very distinctly.
I think Judas Priest got a story about some bit of lighting coming loose during a show once and literally swinging like a morning star, flailing from side and just missing Halford by literally inches before taking him out.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's many occasions like that. There's more than one you can imagine. Incidents like that. I mean, health. Of course, don't forget. Health and safety regs have got a lot tighter over the years as well. I mean, going back to what I was saying earlier about sometimes, in the early days, you could go to a gig and plug in and blow the whole lot. No show.
So as sort of the 70s rolls on, I mean, Cat Stevens take a step back because he's that artist. What do you find yourself doing then? I mean, are you just basically a kind of gun for hire? I mean, do you just start doing road management because you're the only one who can take it? Because as I said, I've worked on quite a few concerts and it's chaos theory and crisis management at all times. So, sure. Have you got that particular skill set? I mean, is it to be unruffled during the whole situation? Yeah.
Calm's the word, as they say. Calm's the word, we would, and also it got departmentalized as well, the whole thing, starting with just a couple of roadies. And, then as more crew came on, departments started to appear from that. So I went from doing a jack of all trades, which is probably a great thing, really, because I knew a lot about, I wasn't an expert, but I knew a lot about all the things that needed to take place, if that makes sense. So then I progressed right through and became the tour manager. And then I was in control of not just the band, but the crew as well, so I used to do the hiring and firing as well,
And when you're doing a sort of a European or North American tour, that is months, years of planning in advance, presumably, Carl, because you don't just think, okay, throw everybody in the back of the tour bus and off we. I mean, but that's what, if you watch some of these films, you just think everybody hops on the back of the bus and goes, right, point it towards, I don't know, Fillmore East.
Yes, absolutely. With Cat Stevens as an example, in those days, we used to do an album a year. It's not unusual now for an artist to take 3 years to make an album, but then it was really pressure was on. So it was album tour, and it's the way it went all the time. So immediately one tour finished, we would go into recording, and during the recording process, I'd be planning the next tour ahead. So probably working like about 12 months in advance, because it's not just slapping a load of gigs together. It's getting the routing right, because you can, lose an awful lot of money by having bad routing, believe it or not.
So if you're
zigzagging all over the place.
Exactly. Yeah. If you've got one gig in Dusseldorf and the next day you're supposed to be in Milan and then you're back in Paris, then you've got a problem, yeah?
Oh, yeah, you're all over the place, yeah. So, things like that have to be calculated in as well.
One of the interesting things, people probably won't understand this, that you presumably never actually get to see much of the show itself, because if you're working in concerts, you're at the back, you're planning everything to the next move. Because people say, it must be really glamorous because you get to see all these wonderful acts. And I've worked with people and they go, I've never even heard that play. They just go on. I'm in the back office and I'm planning how to get out of here, the breakdown.
Yeah, no, you're right. You see snatches, of course, but you don't see a whole show all the way through. When Cat Stevens, my job really on that, when he was on stage, I used to stay in the wings all the time. Because apart from the guitar techs and stuff that would, change his strings if you bust one, I would have to be in the side of the stage as well, But every now and again I could pop out and just, I used to pop out and just get a feel for the audience. Because he would ask a question after the show, what did you think? Blah, blah, blah. So, you have to kind of, absorb that as well,
Local promoters, Carl. Local promoters. Yes. So you rock up with a band and you might be in somewhere in the back of, I don't know, somewhere in Spain, somebody in, in the middle of Spain. You are the biggest thing that has come through this town in 10 to 15 years, and everybody wants a piece of the action. What is it like trying to deal with local authorities, local promoters who bring all their mates with them, people trying to get, in the back, round the sides? I mean, there must be some very interesting stories about that.
Yeah, no, there's all sorts of stuff. I mean, the most interesting one, I saw that subject is, I remember doing, we were touring part of a European tour, and we played Yugoslavia as it was in those days. I mean, it was a communist country.
Yep.
Still, albeit, a lightweight communist country, but it was a communist country. Anyway, got in there, and first of all, the power was inadequate, and we had to have our own generator brought in. So that was number one. Number two, during the sound check, there was people all over the place, because this is something like bizarre going on for them, So we have to try and get them out. Anyway, fine. Come to doing the show, I'm going to call the house lights down, and I'm suddenly stopped. Can't have the lights down. So, oh no, why? Right. Anyway, I go to Cat Stevens and I said to him, look, we're going to have to go on without the stage lights. It's got to be the house lights full on. He said, well, I'm not going to go on then, I said, well, we've got no choice. He says, go and tell him I'm not going on. I said, Steve, I call him Steve. I said, you go and tell him he's got a bloody machine gun. So we had to do the show with the house lights on. And the reason was they didn't want the audience getting up to mischief.
Ah, okay.
So the police... You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So the police could keep an eye on them if it's dark. They don't know, they're so paranoid. It's really bizarre.
I just like the fact that you call Cat Stevens Steve, because otherwise shouting Cat across, if you miss him and you're shouting across an auditorium, Cat, then somebody's going to say, I saw a tabby there last week.
Yeah, Tiddles here.
Tiddles. Now, this is a book, I mean, have you brought together other people for this book? Did you ask other people on the road? Because obviously, when you get to the more extreme versions, I mean, I'm not saying that you got Motley Crue's tour manager, because that is probably a tour from hell. But there have been some interesting tales of sort of rock and roll success and making sure the band's pointing the right way, and Ozzy wandering off somewhere with Dave Lee Roth and not being seen for 15 days. I mean, were people quite happy to sort of give up stories of life on the road?
Sure, yeah. I wanted to do that because, as you probably know, I mean, most of the books about the music industry are all about me and, wasn't it a great show and we did this and we did that. And it's always the artist in the books. And I thought, well, why not get some of the crew and some of the management side? Because quite frankly, I think they've got more interesting stories to tell. I mean, you know what I mean? You know as well as I do. You've been there. You know what it's like, the banter. And the repartee backstage is just outrageous, And I thought, let's get these guys in, have a bit of limelight,
I've got a friend who I work with who's this Ecuadorian guy who's about 18 foot tall, and he's known as Fran the Man Ramirez, right? And we find ourselves in these situations doing gigs, concerts and all. Everybody from, I don't know, Madness to the Sugar Babes to George Benson to whatever. And every time we find ourselves in this situation, and we look at each other and say, we are never going to do this again. Yeah. And every time we say, and then next year we find ourselves, I don't know, me, single-handedly fighting off the Michael Bolton Finnish fan club, which happened one time. We just look at each other and laugh and go, nobody will believe these stories.
I know, yeah. No, it does go on. And that's what I say, that's why I wanted a few of the guys in the book as well, that have and give them a bit of limelight, of course. But, as I said, most of them have got much better stories because, they see the business in a bigger way, in a bigger bubble, if that makes sense. The artists are in a smaller bubble, but the road crew, I mean, they're mixing with the audience. They're mixing with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're talking to people on the street while they're loading gear. Things like that. Whereas the artist just comes from a hotel in a limo, parked by the stage door, and straight in. They don't really have any communication with apart from their internal themselves. But the crew are out there mingling with everybody.
Apart from obviously the rider. Now, explain the rider, because that can be everything from. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Carl just threw his hands. He just looked towards. Now, the rider is not something to get you around the. It's not a golf buggy. Explain the rider, and sometimes the rider can drive you up the bleeding wall. Explain, Carl.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, the rider basically is an addendum to the contract itself. And so it was invented. I think we were one of the first to use it.
So it's your fault. It's your fault, Carl.
Yeah, probably. Always is. Always was. It started off as, it was only something like about 6 requests, to start with. Or offer, doesn't it? Something like that, an addendum, because, we had to sort of say things like, we must have adequate power supply. Now, that's not written into a legal contract. Do you see what I mean? So it's an addendum to the contract.
Sure.
That the power supply must be adequate, blah, blah, blah. So it really started as, things that were essential. And then it got ridiculous, because people started taking the pee. I only want brown M&Ms. The famous M&M one.
Absolutely,
And then it got silly. I mean, and now, of course, it's got to the point where, and of course, in the old days, there was no such thing as catering, backstage catering. That again came into play further down the line. And so then, of course, now you've got people that are vegans, vegetarians, this, that, and the other. You can't, they're allergic to something.
Wind chimes.
So you can't have this. Yeah. No onions, whatever,
So, what are you up to these days? I mean, have you taken a grateful step back from and just doing from the home office and letting somebody, because it is kind of, I mean, I'm just amazed, like bands like AC/DC, Tull, Judas Priest still on the road at this point. With the original with their guitar techs. I mean, the guitar tech is anybody who thinks that a guitar tech just hands somebody a guitar is they are brilliant musicians. No. They know the stuff. They can play all the numbers to step in. And you will go out with your guitar tech, your drum tech, whatever, because they know how you like it. So it must be a tough business touring when you're in your, should we say, your golden period, Carl.
Well, yeah. Well, it is for tour manager and crew.
Yeah.
I will give you that. I think with the band, it's not too bad because they're cushioned an awful lot. I mean, my neighbour Ian Hill, he's the bass player in Judas Priest, and so I'm still hanging out with Ian all the time.
Yeah.
But he's they get 5-star hotels, they get, business class travel, nice motors on the road, all this, that, and the other. So they're cushioned. It's not so bad for those guys. I mean, for example, say the Stones.
Yeah.
I mean, they've all probably got their own Learjet, for God's sake,
The only time they see each other is actually when they step on stage together, isn't it? That's the thing.
Exactly. Yeah, they even have separate dressing rooms.
So what was the moment then, Carl, in your that you looked across the stage and thought, this is what I do, and I'm living my quote unquote best life. I know you've got moments like that still to come. I'm not saying you're about to give it all away, but what point do you think you look across and you get that moment of connection where it all hits and you just start grinning like a loon?
Yeah, the moment of satisfaction, I guess you could call it, couldn't you, really?
Yeah.
I get that, yeah. I mean, there are many times, not just doesn't happen every once or twice, it happens quite a lot. But then by definition, you've got the yin and yang where, some days it hasn't gone completely the way it ought to have gone, so, it's give and take on that. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Is putting a crew together, is picking, because you mentioned these things are done weeks in advance, months in advance, years in advance even. Is it sort of the ultimate pirate captain's job because you're picking your own particular crew? And you go, right. And there is that sort of mentality, isn't there? Because you are the guys who are sleeping under the stage, grabbing. I mean, there's a meme going around about what people think backstage is like, and it's all sort of half-naked groupies with champagne and like Lynyrd Skynyrd. And it's a bunch of sort of tubby guys in Megadeth t-shirts lugging something around, So is it you put the group together because they can take it and that's half the fun?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, a lot of the guys I worked with, I mean, a chap in the book, a guy called Jock McLean, who's an American friend of mine, well, really good friend of mine. I mean, he was the original, he worked at the Shea Stadium gig for the Beatles in the early days.
Yeah.
And this, that, and the other. And we kept on working together one way or the other right until we both retired a few years ago. And another guy, I work with an awful lot on loads of different tours because if they're available, I'd have them in because I knew them well. We got on well. Do you know what I mean? And I knew their work ethic and all that stuff. And another guy called Dick Bell, who Iron Maiden's fans will really know because he was production manager with Maiden for 30 years.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's not a come and go sometimes. Sometimes you're a staff member, if that makes sense. You're on a pension scheme. As I say, Dick was with Maiden for, getting on for 30 years.
Because, again, that's a theatrical show with the trooper and all that, and people want to get a certain sound. It's a big setup. It's a big breakdown as well. You have to know what you're doing, and you have to know that you're not hiring some local guy who's too busy taking selfies and trying to get autographs or get hold of one of the backing singers. Just quickly, women in the business. I spoke to, I forgot her bleeding name now. Is it Kathy, she was with Lemmy for ages, with Motorhead. She was there, and she was saying that there are more women in the business. So obviously during the 60s and 70s, it was a predominantly a boys' club, and it has changed.
Yeah.
It has changed slightly because obviously women on the road. It was a pretty hostile environment.
Sure. Yeah. No, you're right. It was very blokey.
Yeah.
In the old days, and of course, the banter and the jokes were that way inclined as well. But now, they're much more. I mean, I think started around the 80s where women started to get more and more, involved. And of course, a lot more girl groups around as well. So, it goes without saying that they're, going to prefer probably, girls working with them, But, and of course, as a consequence of more females getting involved with the job, it's become a little, well, how can I put it, PC.
Yeah. But it's not a bad thing. When you see...
Not a bad thing at all, no.
When you see modern concerts then, when they all set up and it's all like an experience now, and you've got the meet and greet, you've got the merch, you've got the whole bits and pieces, do you sort of look at it and go, blimey, you guys have got it somewhat easy because I was somewhere on the A something between Rochdale and...
Yeah. Funny enough, yeah. I mean, again, talking to my friend Dick, we often have a conversation. I mean, and we've often said to each other, I wouldn't know really where to start now, and the things have changed so much. One example I'll give you, Giles, is, when I put my shows together, I always used to have, my attitude backstage was to have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I used to have a party atmosphere backstage, and, a few of my contemporaries would agree with me. And the reason for that was, if it was a great atmosphere backstage, it'd be a good atmosphere on stage. But the last few gigs I went to, I can assure you that it was like a bloody doctor's clinic backstage. It's so sterile. Everybody's like, shuffling about, quiet as a mouse, and this, that, and the other. And I'm going, there's just no atmosphere backstage,
If you've ever worked with Simply Red, then you can only refer to a certain person as Mr. Hucknall, and you cannot look him directly in the eye nor speak to him. And that was an interesting gig, Cole.
Oh, I wouldn't have put up with that, quite frankly.
There's a story. I'll tell you a story off air, but I very nearly. Let's not even go there. Listen, I'm going to run out of time. The book is called Backstage Chronicles. It's by Carl Miller. Carl, listeners, you could order it. Go into our bookshop, click on the front page, and it'll come to you. There's an awesome and a very nice picture of him on the back cover as well. Do you do this? Is there a website, Carl? Do you do social media? Do you TikTok?
No, I don't. To be honest, Charles, I can't be bothered.
Well, what people can be bothered to do is go and order the book. It's called Backstage Chronicles. It's on the TRE virtual bookstore. It's by Carl Miller. Carl, it's been an absolute blast to speak to you this morning.
My pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me on.